Welcome to the Daily Items Winter Sports Podcast, a weekly look at what's happening with the Susquehanna Valley's high school and college teams. From Bucknell and Susquehanna University men's and women's basketball to all the high school hoops, wrestling, swimming, and more, the Daily Items Sports Team has the latest on the players, coaches, and teams to watch. Now, here's your host, Daily Items Sports Editor, Kurt Ritzman.
Hi, I'm Kurt, and welcome to our first Winter Sports Podcast of 2019. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Mike Bullock for the first time this winter. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
Now, in my job, I have to know a little bit about a lot of things, and I task Mike with knowing a lot about a lot of things, mostly basketball in the winter season. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And the first thing is, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the Daily Item has been the home to the boys basketball state rankings, which Mike puts together.
It's the third stop, if you will, in the process that began when I worked in Harrisburg and kind of took over that. I was asked to join the process probably 12 or 13 years ago. And, and I've been able to kind of, how do I want to say this, tighten it up a little bit. And then it was at a different source or a different site that is now, dark, if you will. And, when I asked Kurt about continuing here, he gladly suggested yes.
Yeah, I was thrilled to be the host.
And there's a number of other places that are certainly giving us a shout out, if you will, on Twitter or other places. When the next update appears. So
sure.
That's a good thing.
So, yeah, like you said, I mean, as much as I expect you to know about Valley sports, I can't expect you to know all about District 12 and District 8 and District 3. So, well, maybe District 3. But
yes.
I guess how do you know about all these teams that you might not get a chance to see during the regular season to rank them?
Well, it's by reading a lot as much as possible, avoiding paywalls, following things on social media. The process begins really a couple of weeks before the season starts, and I've got some people that I've been dealing with now for quite some time who provide a general outline or an outlook as to what teams we should be keeping an eye on over to start with.
Okay.
And then once the results start to come in, you start to have some things that play out that you can suddenly see, hey, this team needs to move up, or this team needs to move down, or this team needs to disappear, or we've got to find room for this program. And that's the difficulty that comes from one week to the next when you're dealing with areas that, from Erie that don't necessarily play the teams from the Southeast and in Philadelphia. So, although we did have that on Sunday night, by the way, and that was the reason why everything got slowed down. But it's an intriguing process to say the least, and you just hope you're making some intelligent things that don't come back to bite you, so to speak. But I think over the course of time, you get a feel for certain programs and certain areas where we know the strength of those particular areas. And obviously, Philadelphia is the heartbeat of basketball in Pennsylvania at the current time, and has been for a while. And certainly that's where the strength, with the exception of this Kennedy Catholic outfit out west. And Abington Heights sneaking in and winning a championship last year with the former Line Mountain head coach in charge and that sort of thing. But it's fun in a sense. It's time consuming to do everything, what needs to be done.
Now Mike's going to just show you his Danville page. Danville's our only currently ranked team in our coverage area, ranked 10th in Class 4A. So is that you just track results?
That's their results page to date. I have a results page. Well, I don't for anybody that I added in the last week or whatever, but for the most part, there's a results page for every program that's listed somewhere,
Okay.
or was listed at the start of the year and has disappeared. And we're continually, or I'm continually trying to add to get, some ideas about people that have a chance to win district titles, compete for district championships, and hopefully play, in the final 32 when it comes down to the state bracket.
Now, you've been doing this for a long time. How often, I mean, I don't need an exact number, but how often has your number one team in a class turned out to be the state champion?
It's happened a few times.
Okay.
For instance, it's easy to look at an MOTEP charter. It's easy to look at an MOTEP charter. The last couple of years, Newman Goretti, Constitution, they all won state championships last year, and they were all at or near the top of their classes. Kennedy Catholic, when it was in single A, it's been easier in that regard. It's determining the finalists that go in there to be the bird seed or the fodder for them in the championship situation. That's the real challenge.
Okay. Well, thanks for talking about that, Mike. We're going to take a turn to focus on our local boys basketball. And let's start with Danville, our only ranked team.
Well, I should interrupt. Lourdes is ranked as well.
Oh, sure.
And that sort of thing. So we'd be remiss for not recognizing Lourdes being number 2 in single A.
You're right. I wrote down Lourdes was in others to watch. I don't know.
No,
Slip of the pen.
They've been at or near the top all season. A legitimate contender to get back there. Coaching staff didn't feel they played all that well against Southern Columbia.
You saw that game?
I did see
a
that
loss
game.
At the Bob Probert Memorial Tournament?
I did see that game. They did have some problems. How do I say? Finding holes in the zone to get the ball to the horse in the middle, Thomas Schultz. But when he did get the ball, things happened in a positive manner. They've got some terrific outside shooters in Ty Climbera and Adam Sandry. Again, it's at single A, it's what they get, from a production standpoint, from the other two positions on the floor, regardless of who, is playing at the current time, which will dictate how far they do go. And they have a great chance to get to the Final Four in the Schuylkill League. Unfortunately, they'd have to probably play Pottsville in Martz Hall, which is like no-go or a no-fly zone for those people outside. But it's a terrific team and a terrific level with seniors, and that matters. And it's going on with Danville is another senior-heavy team. That's been to the state tournament now the last 3 years, or maybe even longer, but the last 3 years certainly with the core group of players that are in orange and purple uniforms right now.
Now, we're taping this Wednesday afternoon. You guys can see it Thursday. So Wednesday night, Mike, you're heading to see Danville against undefeated Loyalsock. And then to skip ahead for a second, Friday there's some big games too featuring those teams. Danville plays Shamokin in a Hack 1 game.
At Shamokin.
And Loyalsock plays Southern Columbia. And Southern Columbia, who just beat Lourdes, beat Shamokin in the final of that tournament, is an other to watch. So I guess taking a look at that game tonight and Friday, what do you want to see from Danville? What are you expecting to see from the Ironmen?
Well, I think it'll be a very competitive game in the sense that you have two very experienced teams. The question will be, how Danville is able to kind of deal with the, Loyalsock's fairly athletic. Connor Watkins going to Villanova on a football scholarship. Gerald Ross has been a multi-year all-state football guy, and I believe he was all-state in basketball last year. There's a Pastori on this team, and there have been Pastoris on Loyalsock teams going back a ways. Even to when Loyalsock, lost to Trinity in a state quarterfinal, probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Wow.
And then they have Aiden Gare, their big-time outside sniper, who could be a problem too. But from Danville, just getting off to a good start, playing at home. They've got to win these games at home, and just kind of they know what's coming. Loyalsock knows what's waiting, And I just think it's going to be a really good game that'll potentially dictate who wins the Heartland Conference tournament.
Okay. So Loyal Sox undefeated. Tough game Wednesday night, which you'll already know the results, but we don't. Then Southern Columbia on Friday. Southern Columbia's on a roll. Which team has a better chance to give Loyal Sox their first loss, or will both of them beat Loyal Sox?
Wow, that's a tough question, Kurt. I think going on the road, Danville's had 10 days to get ready for this game. I would have to think Danville would have the better chance than Southern going to suburban Williamsport. Not as deep. Certainly, they really only go 6 or 7. And the key is if Loyal Sock does have the perimeter guys that were able to cause problems, such as Lourdes did for 3/4 of that holiday tournament game. I just think it'll be tough. It's tough to beat those guys at home. Ron Insinger's won 900, 900 and some games, closing in on 1,000 if you count what he's done on the girls' side. I like home court advantages.
Okay.
And I think that's a big factor in both of these games.
I want to touch on 2 TVL teams. Greenwood 5-3, and others to watch. Has a big game next Monday against Halifax, who's ranked. What have the Wildcats been doing? I mean, 5-3. Others to watch. What have you seen from them?
Well, they're another team with a lot of senior experience with Luke Myers, Aaron Mortar, and Andy Loy. The team, from a team that went to states last year and was handled by eventual runner-up Lourdes in the first round. Different coaching staff, in a sense, but Coach Gant, Troy Gant, first-year coach, was an assistant with Ken Hauser for more than a decade, also played in the system, so there's been very little change in that respect. They lost their first 2 games to East Pennsboro and DeLone, came back, won 5 in a row, lost to a pretty good West Perry team the other night. Our Greenwood's going to win the Tri-Valley League's West Division.
Okay.
I think that's safe to say. And they have a chance to win a District 3 championship as well. As for the other team, I'm guessing you're looking at Millersburg.
Nope. I just want to mention one thing. We'll talk about Millersburg next week. We got to keep this rolling.
Gotcha.
There was a Saturday night game. East Juniata, Norrie Christian. Xavier Clement scored 38 points to lead East Juniata to the win. Aaron Nouse scored 38 points for Northumberland Christian. How many times have you seen a game with a player in each team score 38 points?
Not too many. I think the historians would have to go back to seeing the shootout at Martz Hall years ago between Trinity's John Morris and Jerry McNamara, the future Syracuse great. Johnny Moe, as they called him down in the Harrisburg area, had 40 plus, and Jerry Mack had 50 plus.
Wow.
And I think Bishop Hannon went on to, either play for or win a state championship. And between those two guys, they scored like 100 points. And John went on to play at Old Dominion. His brother is a Division I college assistant now, and he had 2 brothers that also are a younger brother that played at Lycoming and another brother that played at in Bryan that played at the Division I level. So there's a lot of talent on the floor that night in Pottsville, and a good setting for that type of game.
I just wanted to make sure to point out 76 combined points between Xavier Clement and Aaron Canal, so that's pretty impressive. Switching over to girls, I want to talk about the Bob Probert tournament first. The girls had 3 teams, so it was a round robin. They ended up postponing the Saturday game, which would have been between Lourdes and Shamokin. So Southern beats Lourdes, gives Lourdes their first loss on Friday night. You saw the end of that game.
No, I got there right after it was over.
Okay.
I didn't, but I have seen Southern. I had forgotten about this coming in. I have seen Southern play Mount Carmel. I believe that's the only team that's beaten Southern Columbia.
It was until Shamokin at 4-4 then gave Southern their second loss the next day.
That's that back-to-back, probably a fatigue, maybe some fatigue factor, plus big rivalry aspect. Playing at the home court,
yes,
as we've talked about here.
Yeah, the Purple
times.
Palace.
But I did talk to Scott, on the site as I was taking his seat, and he talked about how Southern just, basically, to use a term that I first heard in the Harrisburg area, that they were out athleticized.
Okay.
And Southern is an interesting team. A lot of those girls were on the state championship soccer team. A lot of those girls were on the team that went to the state basketball tournament last year after winning a district championship. So they're formidable.
Yeah.
If they get, the one thing to be honest, they need a true facilitator to get some of these other people into the flow of the game.
Okay. One team I know you've seen is, I believe, our only undefeated girls team left. Danville at 8-0. Just won a holiday tournament up at Bloomsburg University. What have you seen? What did you see from the Ironmen when you got a chance to see them? Scott and I have talked in depth about their two post players, Petrus and Coombe. Is that what stuck out to you when you got a chance
Absolutely.
to see them?
They're very similar to Southern Columbia in the respect that, when I saw them against Central Columbia, Central tried to pressure them. Danville threw over the top of it for the most part, did not try to dribble through it. They could be vulnerable to pressure because they really don't have a true point guard. And to get those people into play. Petrus is really, she could shoot the ball if she has space and time, especially from the baseline area. And Clara Coombe, is just a wonderful athlete who's going to be able to run and run and run. I mean, she's a terrific hurdler and middle distance type kid, and is just so long and understands her role within of what they're trying to do. And Lene Williams, I think, is also another girl who's capable of knocking down perimeter shots. Yeah. I think Scott said she had 6 threes against Mifflinburg, and she struggled the night I saw her. Okay. But I know how athletic she and her family are too. Yeah. So, I think that's a team that has promise because they have size and they have productive size. And that's why Mount Carmel could be very good here down the stretch, because I think Danny Ray Reno had a huge game the other night too.
I'm glad you brought that up. That was the next thing I wanted to talk about. Mount Carmel goes to Weatherly for the Lady Wrecker Holiday Classic. I'm guessing Weatherly is the Wreckers?
They are the Wreckers.
Okay, good. So in the first game, Mount Carmel edges Norrie Christian, who if they decide to play in the playoffs, I think could be a surprise team by 1 point. The next day, Danny Ray Reno goes out, scores a career-high 36 points, 15 in the second quarter to help Mount Carmel run away with the title. Again, I mean...
She's a force. And again, an athletic, she's also a field kid, throws in different events in the spring. But her advantage is the fact that she does have that facilitator in Lauren Ayers,
sure,
who can put her in good spots with the ball, and it's just a matter of her knocking down the shots and getting the opportunities, because she is 6'2" at least, and mobile on top of that. Wow. And then they've got the two girls in Shedleski and Bernini who can knock down threes to kind of open up the inside for them. So when they're going well, and they and all those girls are sophomores except Brooke Bernini, who's a junior. This is a team that come February could be a real problem.
Okay.
For some people,
sure.
And just because they have one size and two, a true point guard, and you and I both know, we've been at this long enough to know that you need to have good guards when it comes to postseason play.
Definitely. 2 more quick things before we move on to college basketball. If you watch this Thursday, there's a very good girls game tonight. Lewisburg taking on Southern Columbia, so you might want to go check that out. And your weekly Kennedy Stroop from Greenwood update. She is averaging 23 points a game in Tri-Valley League play. I don't have her overall numbers, but still 23 in conference games. All right, Mike. Susquehanna men, 7-4, coming off a split at a weekend tournament on the 29th and 30th of December, heading into landmark play on Saturday. You've seen Susquehanna. How do you feel about them get with conference play starting Saturday?
Well, I think they're going to be a team that no one is going to want to play because of the fact that they have 5 freshmen in their rotation in their first 10, and by now there's a track record, at that point in time, but they're going to be more consistent in January than they were in November and December. They're big in a sense. They can play big with, Zach Kinect, Dominic Dunn. They can go to 6'10". Stuart McAvoy, the freshman from Downingtown West. Wes Simons from Scranton Prep is another 6'6" kid. So they have some size, but what Frank liked coming into this year was the fact that he has some bigger guards.
Okay.
And that sort of thing than he's had in the past. And that's where the return of Lucas Jurisic may be one of those things. He's coming off the bench now, had a good first half against Albright on Sunday. It's a team that, I just don't know that you can really get plugged in on one particular person defensively against them because they have a possibility that somebody could go off at any given time. As you and I were talking about Tyler Hoagland,
Right.
Coming in here today in the sense that he had a real big second half in the win, that they had to hold on to against Albright.
Yeah, and what I think is as we've sat in here talking college basketball when Todd was in, we're talking about the freshmen. We're talking about Butler, the sophomore for Susquehanna. I think we talked about Dominic Dunn the first 2 times we've done this. And then here's a guy, Hoagland, who's been around for a while.
Right.
And then he has a 21-point game in a nice win Sunday.
Right, and then you have Seth Callahan, who's the other senior, who is the one given in terms of, a guy that can strike from distance. And yet he's at 5'11", perhaps, I think had 3 or 4 rebounds the other day, in situations, and he's capable of having a big game at any particular time. So, Seth Callahan and Hoagland are keys to getting those guys acclimated to what they're about to run into with, undefeated Scranton, Catholic, a real good Moravian team. They did beat Juniata, which had won the regular season title last year, which is a good start. I think the schedule favors them a little in the sense that they're going to Goucher on Saturday, which has struggled in league play the last couple of years. So.
Sure. We'll want to talk briefly about the Susquehanna women. They've been struggling. They're 3-7. They lost 6 in a row. They host Kings on Thursday if you want to go watch that. And then they start landmark play at Goucher on Saturday also. And I mean, I don't know how long ago it's been, maybe a month when you went and saw them and Coach Reed was talking about wanting to find some consistency.
Right.
And it seems like he's still looking for that.
Well, again, there's not a lot of, the seniors have kind of dropped off to the wayside in a sense. I think he's realizing that, that Jim's realizing that his younger players are the ones that are getting things done in terms of, Lemire or, Sadie Comfort coming off and dialing it up from anywhere on the floor. I believe Esposito at that point in time. The younger girls seem to be the ones who have been, and Nevin Honinger have been more consistent early on in non-league play than some of the older people that have been through this.
Okay. Switching gears to Bucknell women, they played once in the 2 weeks between podcasts. Road loss at Iowa State. Big 12 team. That's a tough place to play in the Hilton Coliseum, a long road trip. It's actually the first time, other than going to Europe in the summer, that the Bucknell women took a plane during Aaron Russell's tenure as coach for a game. So they lost that. Kate Walker scored 15 points in her home state. Iowa State really pulled away in the second quarter. That dropped the Bison to 9-3. They opened Patriot League play Thursday by hosting American. Bucknell men. They played more during the break.
Yes. Yeah, and in some exotic locales.
Yeah, they sure did. They're 6-6 now. They started their trip with a bad loss on the road at St. Mary's. Then Hawaii for the Diamond Head Classic. A good 2-point win over a tough Rhode Island team in the first round. Lost to a really good TCU team in the semifinal. TCU went on to win the Diamond Head Classic. And then came back and on Christmas Day smacked around UNLV.
Granted, it's not, the UNLV that our fathers and grandfathers knew, with Jerry Tarkanian, but nonetheless, it's a name program out of the Mountain West, which will curry points. If Bucknell would happen to somehow go 18-0 in Patriot League play, and then lose in the tournament,
Sure.
and have hopes of an at-large bid, to the national tournament. But there are some interesting signs on this team. Again, there are not a lot of seniors, with, Mackenzie and Nate Jones had some moments against TCU. And Sestina, who they must keep out of foul trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's their one given up front and the one consistent part that they have, since some of their other front court guys are athletic as heck, but they're not quite as mature physically as he is. And I think that's a problem because he can take somebody outside. He hit a 3 against TCU from the top of the circle. And for a guy who wasn't a starter to be named Patriot League Player of the Year in the preseason, I think says a lot about what the rest of the league thinks about him. And and I think the neat part too is to when they open against Army, you have freshman Andrew Funk is going to go head to head with his brother Tommy.
Yes, freshman Andrew Funk, who was Patriot League Rookie of the Year based on his play at the Diamond Head Classic. So that game was Wednesday night. So if you're seeing this Thursday morning, make sure to pick up the paper and read about the Battle of the Funk Brothers.
And we're not including Josh Funk in that.
Yeah, no relation for our freelancer there. And, one of the concerns I had, and Coach Davis nicely told me I was crazy, was point guard. Stephen Brown had held that down for so long, graduated, playing professionally in Europe now. So Jimmy Sotos, who spent time at both guards last year as a freshman, he set a Diamond Head Classic tournament record with 12 assists in their Christmas Day win. So Coach Davis was probably righter than I was on that one.
Well, he would know better, and I think both of us realize how tough Jimmy Sotos is. He grew up in Chicago, played against a lot of quality opponents in Chicago, came to Lewisburg, probably ready, or as ready as any freshman that they've had. I think our that would have been a concern of mine. Would have been following up Stephen Brown because he was the one guy who when they needed something could really create his own shot and bail them out on numerous occasions. But Jimmy Sotos is a different kind. He's more of a true finder and getting other people involved than he is going to kind of create his own shot and score his own. He's going to want to get Kimball, McKenzie into the flow, Avi Toomer into the flow, find the big fella inside. That's what and that's what that 12 assists in that game would indicate.
A little inconsistent for Bucknell. I think they're definitely going to be a challenger in the Patriot League again this year. They're at Army Wednesday night, like we said, then at Boston University Saturday.
That'll be a tough game, too.
Yeah, that's a tough place to play. But that ends an 8-game non-home streak, either road or Hawaii at neutral sites. So if you want to watch the Bison play, you will be able to finally next week.
Well, they've got something going up there, and and they play fun basketball. It's entertaining.
Sure.
It's not what you would expect from a low to mid major program that they're just trying to scrap to stay in games. They actually go out and try to dictate what they want to do.
Exactly.
And that was evident last year, and in the games that I've seen on television, that's been evident this year as well.
Okay. All right. Thank Mike for joining me this week.
I appreciate it.
We're going to welcome in Chris Nagy next to talk a little wrestling before we wrap up this week's podcast. All right. Now, Chris has joined me to talk a little wrestling. Welcome, Chris.
Happy New Year!
So we had some big tournaments last weekend. Let's start with Trojan Wars.
Trojan Wars was very fun to watch. There was a lot of different things. You wanted to see exactly how Southern would react. And Southern won their second straight Trojan Wars. It's the third straight year that they've come home with a champion, second straight year that they've come home with multiple champions. So I think the one name that surprised a lot of people who have not been in and around the program was Cole Bisco. But people who have understand the program would understand that, losing Jarrett Lane is hard, but we knew why Jerry Marks wasn't going to the Kleenexes too much because he knew he had Cole coming up as a freshman. Gage Garcia looking very good. The one thing I like to watch about Gage is his first 10 matches of every year.
Okay.
Let's not count his freshman year because of the ankle injury from football, but you want to see where he's at and what he's doing. And he's doing a lot more from the neutral position he's going, which is standing, and he's going a lot more towards the ankle. He's not relying on what we always call the bread and butter, which is the single leg, which is a one leg, or a two leg, which is a blast down below.
That's his bread and butter, or Southern as a program?
Just wrestlers' bread and butter. That's the first. When you go into an elementary wrestling room for the first time, the first move they teach is a double leg, because they always say that you could trip yourself and still pull off a double leg. The single leg is the next one, and that's usually the first two takedowns any wrestler does. So I mean, they become like that good old sweatshirt that you always turn to and everything, that keeps you nice and fuzzy warm, even though your wife has been wanting to throw it away for 3 years. That's what the single and double is. And when you have wrestlers who come off of a very athletic sport, say a football, they will go to that bread and butter way too much, and you'll see them kind of not really wanting to take chances. This year, Gage is taking a lot more chances. He's going a lot more for the ankle picks. He's going more for the duck unders. He's going more for the high crotches, which is more of a single leg all the way up through.
How about a Granby?
Granby is but we're in the wrong position for a Granby. But I gave you the week 4 of the podcast to pull Granby out. You got me. You got me in week 3. But he's doing a lot more of the thinking and everything else instead of relying on the old standbys.
Okay.
And that's what makes me think that Gage is going to have a very good year so far.
You mentioned Jarrett Lane. He made his Lehigh debut last weekend also. So keep an eye on that going forward. See what Jarrett can do for the Mountain Hawks.
And don't forget, we have a lot of local flavor at Lehigh with Cole Walter, Ryan Price, Kent Lane. So I mean, Lehigh is starting to become Valley East, and it's a real good program there. So it's something to keep an eye on. Remember, they wrestle Bucknell every year too. And speaking of Bucknell, we'd be remiss not to mention the results from the Midland tournament, which is the second biggest holiday tournament, minus the Scuffle, which is going on Tuesday, Wednesday of this week. Zach Hartman, who they're in the build up to Penn State, all Dan Wormsberger was saying, Coach Dan Wormsberger was saying, was, this Hartman kid, you got to watch this Hartman kid, you got to watch this Hartman kid. And what does he do? He goes out and he takes down Jason Nolf in the opening segment. I mean, he gets pinned,
right?
But he takes down Jason Nolf, and I think a lot of people that might have thought Danny was just throwing up a smoke screen. Everybody gets excited. This kid is going to be somebody to watch, and then he goes up to the Midlands, upsets 2 ranked wrestlers, makes it to a semifinals at the Midlands as a sophomore, and I mean as a freshman. I'm sorry, makes the Midland semis and then wrestles back and gets third. That's pretty impressive for a kid who's just coming into it. So Zach Hartman is a name to really watch out for the next couple of years from Bucknell. Let's just hope he stays away from that little Bucknell curse, which is the injuries.
Okay.
The last couple of years, a lot of real big names that we thought were going to do a lot of great things at Bucknell started getting. Tommy Slay is one of them. Started getting a lot of injuries and never lived up to their potential.
Okay. Back to Trojan Wars for a minute. Other than Southern, who impressed you?
Honestly, just Southern, to be honest with you. I mean, I thought we had some decent performances out of Trojan Wars. I thought we had some decent performances out of Hollidaysburg and everything else. But I think Southern, I think a lot of people, they're ranked first in the state and everything else and that. But I don't think they realize how deep. And this is a Southern team that won Trojan Wars, which now is probably the highest rated tournament in Pennsylvania, maybe right next to Powerade, with 4 projective starters in the dual tournament in a month, sitting on the bench.
Wow.
So let's realize that, hey, I know it's individuals and everything, but it's the room. Let's realize, a lot of people say, wrestling is all about that room. What you have to practice with, what you have motivating you and everything else, it's that wrestling room. One team that really impressed me going through that, and I'm going to see them Thursday night, and that is Midwest. And as I'm looking at my pre-seeds and everything else, and I'm looking at teams that could maybe not beat Southern, but give them a run for their money, Midwest, the Mustangs, we got to keep our eye on. They're gonna have Southern every step of the way. They're in the same sectional as Southern, so you go watch them, because these are the kids that are going to wrestle these Southern kids, and we might be seeing from a sectional rematch at regionals. Okay. Because I think they're going to go toe to toe with them all the way through. We're not going to see these 60 to 25s. We're going to see a lot of 40 to 30s when Midwest and Southern wrestle. Wow. Because I think they have the right spots, and we'll see tomorrow, because tomorrow's a big test for a Thursday night. I mean, it's a big test for them, because they're going to be wrestling Montoursville.
Okay. So Southern was the only team, but we did have a strong showing at the 220 bracket at Trojan Wars.
Yes, we did.
Dakota Snyder was third from Lewisburg, and Nate Schoen from Selinsgrove.
Yeah.
So 220 could be a good weight class for the Valley.
Yeah, very good. And I expect both of them to be at states this year. They're both going to be in different classifications. But Dakota Snyder, finally, he's been one of these kids that you've been waiting. It's like that plant your grandmother puts on the shelf and keeps watering, and you're wondering why she's watering it, because there's never been a flower. And then 4 years later, all of a sudden, this thing's sprouting all over the kitchen. And that's what Dakota Snyder is right now to me. We've seen a little, and then we see a little, and now it's boom, he's out, and he's wrestling with like nothing to lose, and it's just fun to watch. And we've been waiting for that potential. Nate Schoen is another kid. I don't think he's buying into the hype. I don't think he's buying into what a lot of people think he's going to do. And I mean, even his coach said it.
You mean be an undefeated 3-time state champion the rest of his career?
Yeah, that's what I think. And Seth Martin thinks he will be. And Seth Martin should know, because Seth Martin is his partner in the wrestling room. So the coach of Selinsgrove. So, I mean, Schoen is going to be, before it was when you would do states and that, it would be you wait for the first round, and then the kids would drop down into the loser bracket. You go back to the hotel room, and you follow it on the PIAA website, and you file your story from there. No more of that in AAA this year, because we have a couple kids from Selinsgrove that are probably going to make a lot of noise and probably will medal this year.
And then just one more quick point. Sort of 220 related, is Shikellamy went to Conestoga Valley Holiday Tournament. Adam Young, a sophomore, won the 220-pound title there, and they also got a runner-up from Cade Balestrini and a third place from Drew Balestrini. So again, that 220 in the Valley could be real good this year.
And Adam Young has been a kid that a lot of people have followed. Those who would remember the Shikellamy runs through Little League 4 or 5 years ago. Adam Young was the kid that was breaking windows at Milton. He was breaking windows right and left. I mean, the kid was hitting home runs. He just has such great upper body strength, good head on his shoulder, and he's one kid I was following his career a little bit through junior high and everything else, and this kid's going to make some noise. And like you said, 220, 195, because I don't know if Young's going to drop down or not. I think there's going to be a little competitive, there's a little thing there to maybe get him away from Schoen. I'm not sure, but it's going to be fun to watch.
Okay. So that's our look at wrestling, and that's the end of week 3 of our Winter Sports Podcast. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.